It's too good.
It's so rare that like that shit-eating look is so well earned and deserved. You know, literally everyone in my world is talking and thinking about me. Is what that face says. Like, here I am.
Here I am.
The literal center of the universe. Here we are, Cast Iron Brains, a podcast hoping to be banned by executive order by Donald John Trump. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I don't know.
Lori does not know how she's doing. I suspect she'll find out soon enough. Tonight is Monday, March 31st, 2025. The first official day of my children's spring break.
Nice.
They're home all week long.
Awful. Everybody gets to hang out but me.
You have a good weekend, Abe?
Yeah, I hung out with some friends, and I went on this hike on Saturday morning. Lasted a little longer than I expected because went the wrong way. I don't know how you screw up a hike, but we did. And,
where did you go?
Arabia Mountain over here in
That
Atlanta.
sounds really far away.
It's actually not that far. It's like, 30 minutes east of Atlanta. It's not too far. It's a pretty nice little place. And then just watched a lot of March Madness.
30 minutes east of Atlanta strikes me as like
heading towards Conyers. Think just in that
doesn't
general
help.
Yeah.
I'm just like, because maybe you would say like 30 years ago, 30 minutes east of Atlanta, you'd be like in the middle of fucking nowhere,
Right.
But not so any longer. Like 30 minutes east of Atlanta is just the burbs.
Right. I mean, if you lived there and you told somebody where you're from, you'd say from like Atlanta Metro. Like if
you
you're
don't
not
ever
from
want
here.
to tell someone that you're from Conyers.
Yes, that's true. That was a big.
Or Smyrna.
I believe that was the
people from there say they're from Smyrna, Georgia, or Conyers, Georgia. Even when they're in Georgia, they have the comma Georgia afterwards.
Yeah.
It's weird.
There was I think that was the area, there was like a big syphilis outbreak in some high school over there, like in Rockdale County. I remember back 20 some odd years ago.
Oh yeah? Word got around?
It was like I think there was like a PBS Frontline about it. Like, hey, I think I wrestled one of those teams. Like, oh boy.
This is how Abe tried to tell his family that he got syphilis. It was just someone on the wrestling mat.
That's
Mom, I swear. It wasn't in the locker room with the boys.
That's
it was on the wrestling mat.
Yes.
Those sickos from Conyers.
Can't trust them.
March Madness, not so mad. The four number one seeds all advanced to the Final Four for the first time since 2008, I believe.
Very top heavy. And, the team that they're playing are not very good, or at least I thought they were good until they played them. Like Alabama looked like shit against whomever, Duke, I think it was. Just it's weird how there seems to be just a handful of teams that are really good, including Florida and Auburn. They're playing each other again after the SEC title. It's kind of like Georgia-Alabama, like it's a rematch.
Oh, yeah? Who won the SEC tournament title?
Florida in an upset kind of. I think Auburn was the team that was supposed to be the better of the two, and I think Florida won that one. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
I want them both to lose.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not possible. So at least one SEC team will make the finals, and neither of them are, teams you want to root for.
Lose.
Yeah.
Lots of annoying sports headlines here. I don't want to do cast iron balls or anything, but
sounds like you do.
Braves are off to a rough start.
You already talked about that.
Yeah, but not in the show. It was pre cast iron billboard show.
Recording.
That's true. I don't think I will include my Jurix and Profar commentary in the Billboard Hot 100 game, though. That would be ridiculous.
You could put it over here. You have the power.
I don't know. It feels like crossing a firewall. I don't.
No, we already talked about it. Is what I'm saying. You can skip it.
Jurickson Profar out for 80 games. Braves 0-4 to start the season after getting swept by the Padres. 3 more against the Dodgers. Not looking good to start for the old Bravos.
The Braves get the All-Stars this year, right? I think it's in Atlanta.
Is it this year after
I think so. I could be wrong.
Are we fully healed from 2020?
Yes.
Is
COVID over? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, because that was a George Floyd voting rights issue, which is what...
Was it the bathroom thing? What was the...
No, that was... They got mad because the Georgia legislature was passing, doing voting stuff.
Joining us now exclusively on Channel 2 to talk about that decision, Governor Kemp, thank you for being with us. Baseball's Commissioner Rob Manfred said that this is all about taking a stance against ballot box restrictions, referencing the newly passed voting legislation here in Georgia. What's your reaction?
Well, Jovita, thanks for having me. My reaction is Major League Baseball has caved to the cancel culture and a bunch of liberal lies, quite honestly. He didn't cite one specific part of the bill that he disagrees with, and it's because Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams continue to lie about the Election Integrity Act that I just signed. And I believe for your viewers at home, you might as well get ready, because now that they're coming after your baseball game, they're going to come after your business. They're going to come after your way of life. But I will tell you, I'm not backing down. This is a good bill that provides more access, especially on the weekends, and many other things that I've been saying for days. And it's really a sad day for hardworking Georgians, for baseball fans like myself, that Major League Baseball just caved to the pressure.
All right, here I am in the edit the next morning, and I went back and I was reading up on some of this stuff about the MLB moving the All-Star game and all of the rhetoric around it. And this is throwback to when Joe Biden was talking about how this is the Jim Crow of the 21st century, that the Georgia Election Integrity Act, I think it had a couple of different names, of 2021 was somehow the new Jim Crow and was going to prevent minorities from having their voices heard. And there were all sorts of legitimate arguments about what Kemp was doing with regards to election stuff, including some interesting reporting on the so-called purging of voter rolls. But ultimately, the impact of this law and all of the controversy around it seems to have been fairly minimal in terms of a negative outcome for minority voters. A poll released by the University of Georgia after the 2022 midterms found that 0% of black Georgia voters had trouble casting their ballots, which is a very low number. The poll asked respondents to rate their voting experience from the 2022 election, and of those that identified as black, 0% said they had a poor experience, 72% said it was excellent, and 23.6% said it was good. Going further, 99% of all respondents said they had no issues while voting, and 95.3% of voters reported a wait time of 30 minutes or less. You'll remember probably that also this was included in this law was the thing about giving bottles of water to people waiting in line, and how that was going to be made illegal. So, there were some aspects of the law that were obviously silly and probably bad. But ultimately, all of the hand-wringing and Sturm und Drang about how this was the new Jim Crow and they were trying to take away the right of minorities to vote was a bit much and not in keeping with how reality bore out in the elections that followed. And granted, all of this is happening in the context of the post-George Floyd moment, but it's not hard to see the way in which the elevated rhetoric and the highly emotional response to this sort of stuff.
And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this, because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, this is gigantic, what they're trying to do.
Perhaps in some way contributed to what became a Trumpian moment coming back. And maybe that's too neat and tidy, but looking back on it now, with as Abe is saying, the All-Star game coming back to Atlanta this year, and Trump being back in office, and what the ultimate impact was of the law that everyone was freaking out about so much that Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball had to move the All-Star game to Colorado, or thought it was in the best interest of baseball to make their voices heard on this issue, really does seem to speak to the various ways in which the pendulum swings so crazily. And perhaps it would have been best to just calm down and maybe cool it with the new Jim Crow rhetoric and wait to see what the impact of the law actually was, and then, challenge these things in court as necessary.
Also, the Department of Justice is seeking to dismiss a lawsuit linked to a voting law here in the state. Following the 2020 election, Georgia Republicans passed Senate Bill 202. It added a voter ID requirement for mail-in ballots and shortened the time period for requesting an absentee ballot. It also barred groups from handing out food and water to voters who were waiting in line. A lawsuit filed in 2021 argued the rules were intended to suppress black voters, and the law received significant backlash from groups like Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, and the MLB, which moved that year's All-Star game out of Atlanta.
Brian Kemp was purging voter rolls, according to
Stacey Abrams,
the Angry Libs.
That's right. I think you're right. Yeah, it is in Atlanta. Just double check. So they'll right the ship by then.
Yeah, everything will be fine by July.
I think that means that Trump won, right? Because he was upset when they moved it outside of Atlanta because of the voting thing, and then Colorado got it. But now everything is fine again.
Yeah, nature's healing.
Yeah.
Seems like it.
Abe, did you watch 60 Minutes yet this week?
No, I'm a little behind on my television viewing.
Well, I bring it up only because the lead story was about the Voice of America and how the Trump administration, via an executive order, has essentially attempted to cancel the entire Voice of America broadcasting operation. He put Carrie Lake in charge, obviously a well-qualified person to run such a thing, I guess, as former news anchor in Arizona who then lost 2 or 3 Senate races, something like that.
Yeah, how many? And I think she ran for the governorship too. Like she ran and lost a lot. So appointed is the next best thing. Hey, just pick me. Enough of the people deciding.
Anyway, the story on 60 Minutes included talk of how the Trump administration is trying to end the Voice of America and how that's bad as a general rule. I think that is obviously true. What they didn't go into, though, was what the specific objections are to the Voice of America from the Trump administration. Like, why? What exactly have they done to upset conservatives and MAGA world so much? And so I went to the executive order, and actually what I went to was whitehouse.gov, and it's got a list of 10 things
I hate about you. Is that what it's called?
Anyway, the point here being that the Voice of America has a fairly strict mandate to avoid politics and bias in the way that you would not expect from your typical media outlet, right? And you sort of accept the fact that there's going to be some lean to your news outlet, generally speaking. The only lean that Voice of America has historically is, of course, a sort of propagandistic pro-American one, right. Which is what it's for. And as someone who thinks that America can do good in the world, I'm all for the Voice of America broadcasting into despotically controlled or autocratically controlled parts of the world, like China or North Korea or former Soviet countries, right? Like the whole reason that it existed was to broadcast American propaganda to the people of the world who would be getting news about America from sources that we didn't want them getting to be the only source of their information. And this is from whitehouse.gov, and it's entitled The Voice of Radical America. And it's dated March 15th, so a couple weeks ago. And this is in reference to President Donald J. Trump's executive order on Friday, will ensure that taxpayers are no longer on the hook for radical propaganda. And it gives a list, a bulleted list of about 10 or so different things that they have identified as real bad, right? Things that the Voice of America did. And so one would imagine that these are like the worst sins that they came up with, right? Because why else would you be highlighting them? Number one on the bulleted list is Voice of America's management told staff not to call Hamas and its members terrorists except when quoting statements, which to me, that's kind of fine, actually. Like,
they're not necessarily terrorists.
Hamas is the elected government of the Palestinian people, right? It's probably, I mean, yes, are they bad? Yes, absolutely. But by default, should we be calling them terrorists unless you're quoting like Israeli people or other or other sources? Right. I don't have a particular problem with that. The Daily Call, and then they link to a Daily Caller article. Multiple Voice of American reporters have posted anti-Trump content on social media, as though that's some fucking sin that people who work for the organization are freely expressing their political views online. Is it maybe frowned upon in a newsroom to have your employees going out there and displaying their biases and partialities? Yes. Perhaps it's not great, but like, should we shut down the entire organization because of it? I would suggest probably not. A couple of other ones includes from the Voice of America's website itself. What is white privilege and whom does it help? That's an article that Voice of America published about white privilege. You'll never guess when they did that. Like if you had to guess, when we pop quiz hotshot without knowing anything. When did the Voice of America publish an article called "What is White Privilege and Whom Does It Help"?
Summer of 2020?
Nailed it. June 17th of 2020. And I read the relatively lengthy article, and all it does is say, hey, do you know those two words that you keep hearing all of the time? Because it's all over the internet, this white privilege stuff. Here's what people are saying about it. Here's what that means, is all it does, and nothing else. Like it is not saying the editorial position of the Voice of America is that white people have too much privilege in this world and receive what should be impermissible benefits because of the color of their skin. No, They basically just go on Twitter and say, here's what people are saying about white privilege on Twitter, and then as is the case with all modern media outlets, they speak to an expert at the end who says, quote, white privilege is a complex yet critically important concept. Erin Cooley, an assistant professor of psychology at Colgate University in Hamilton, New York, explained in written remarks to VOA. Quote, that said, more research is needed to clarify how to harness white privilege lessons to combat hierarchy. Further, continual education about all of the ways white privilege may shape different aspects of our society is imperative to begin to address persistent systemic racism, end quote. So just talking to some dopey assistant professor at Colgate and her understanding of what white privilege is apparently enough to get it included in an executive order from the White House, from Donald Trump, about ending the Voice of America. Another example that the White House puts out here is that the Voice of America faced criticism for sharing a story and video appearing too favorable to presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. So, like, there was a Fox News article about a story that aired on Voice of America that people believed was too favorable to Joe Biden. And then in 2019, Voice of America fired reporters for their roles in canceling a broadcast midstream after pressure from the Chinese government. And in March 2019, Voice of America ran a segment about transgender migrants seeking asylum in the United States. So just the fact that they presented a story about a transgender individual is evidence that this is a radical organization that should no longer exist in the world.
Right. It seems like if you kind of read between the lines, the primary fault is that they were anti-Trump, right? Everything else, is added to make the argument stronger. But it seems like, because at least on 2 occasions there was something, too favorably to Biden, but that means against who? Trump, right? And then there was some posts that some of the people made that were anti-Trump. Like, it seems like I have the power to get rid of this or get rid of the funding for this program, and because I want to, I will. Like, all the points, all the bullet points are kind of besides the point. Like, he could have just said, like, because fuck you, that's why, right? It would be just as strong of a case.
And like, when you go to all of these different like media ratings agencies to find out, like, does the Voice of America lean left or lean right? It's always center. Like, it's always, no, this is a down the road organization that doesn't express bias one way or the other, except, to be clear, wildly pro-American bias, right? Like, it's broadcasting to people in their languages, basically as a beacon of how awesome it is that America is in the world, right? Like, that is the primary thing. Right. It's one of those things that sort of like American film, right? Like Hollywood. It speaks to people, and people see it. They see it as a trusted news source, relatively speaking, and they see it as a place to go to get news about the world, in much the same way that we think of like the BBC or whatever. And the idea that somehow that is bad or is somehow a waste of American taxpayer dollars is fucking bonkers to me, because it's like it's just relatively speaking, whatever the millions of dollars that it costs every year, like, it is just doing good for America out there in the world. There's and if you want to get weird about it, you could say, well, it encourages the shat upon people of the world to dream of coming to America and making a better life for themselves. Like, could it be that? Could that be the stupid motivation here? Right. It's like, well, this speaks to...
It's just isolationist.
The downtrodden, and we don't want to speak to the downtrodden about how great it is to be American?
Yeah, that's a good point. I do wonder, though, what if the argument was like, I want to get rid of Voice of America because it's too propagandistic, and like, we want to get out of that business. Like, during the Cold War era, we wanted to get our message out, and it had to go, we have to do certain things that we're not proud of, but, we were going up against this evil foe. But the landscape has changed, and, the technology has also changed. I mean, like, there's the internet now. So, like, what is the utility of this anyways? But, like,
I don't know. It fucking rules that we can broadcast American news into North fucking Korea, where they're not allowed on the internet, right? It's kind of fucking cool that we can do so in China as well, where, yeah, they have the internet, but also they have strict firewalls in place that disallow people from going where they want to go on the internet or saying things that they want to say on the internet. It's fucking awesome that we can do the same into Russia as well, right? Like, I think that's like, yeah, sure, call me a filthy imperialist or what have you. I'm fine with that. Right. I think it's fucking cool and good that we have done that for so long, and I think we should continue doing it. And it seems like we're throwing away an aspect of American soft power for no good reason at all. Right.
There's not a lot of upside by getting rid of it, but I do wonder, though,
and who does it make happy?
I mean, yeah.
Donald Trump.
It makes
Donald Trump.
It
I'm
makes
right. Donald
Vladimir
Trump.
Putin and Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping happy. And like, that's almost all you need to know about whether or not this is a good thing or not.
Right. I do wonder, though, like, what reach it has. Like, do you think, because like, obviously we're not, like, the domestic side, we're not the audience for this, but like, I wonder how much reach it has in China, in North Korea, and other places, in Russia.
The Voice of America reached 326 million weekly listeners on all platforms and languages as of 2022. BBC World Service has an estimated 188 million weekly listeners, broadcasting in 32 languages as of 2009. So it's like among the most listened to radio programs in the world was Voice of America until two weeks ago.
See, with a reach like that,
it's just going away now.
To get rid of all of this just because they said some bad things about one person seems kind of ridiculous.
New York Times says, collectively, the outlets reached more than 425 million listeners or viewers worldwide. VOA, which counted approximately 360 million of those people in nearly 50 languages, fell silent immediately. It's a huge number of people, right? Whatever. And again, like, not to say that this is the reason for it, but like, if Donald Trump were simply trying to make Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping happy, this would be the thing that he would do, right? Like, among the things that pisses off the autocrats in other countries that America does is this sort of deployment of propagandistic soft power, and like, if they had a bucket list of things that they wish the American president would do, this would be on it.
Right. Is Russia Today a comp to Voice of America?
If one were being particularly cynical, I think, yeah, probably.
Because they're not getting rid of that.
Right.
So it seems like, I don't know, like, why get rid of something without anything in return?
I'm not sure that if you went to the the media watchdog ratings agencies, you would find that Russia Today was ranked as a straight down the middle news outlet.
No.
I'm sure in Russia it is. No, straight down the middle. Trust us.
Anyway, it is one of a large number of executive orders. As we talked about in that first week, I made the joke about, or not the joke, but the observation that, like, I would like to see a chart that shows, like, the number of executive orders.
Oh, did somebody make you one?
Of a president in the first few weeks, and we would see how it has dramatically increased in recent years. And helpfully, over on Truth Social, Donald Trump
he made you one.
Truthed out such a chart.
I could have swore I saw one that had FDR up there also.
Who's the blue? Is that Biden or Obama?
We have the next one down is Biden.
Okay.
And then in green there you see Barack Obama's first term, and then in yellow is Trump's first term. And so, but basically it does exactly what I thought that it would, which suggests that in recent years, recent presidencies, we've gotten far more executive orders, and Trump just completely blows away the rest of the field here with,
well, unlike anyone's ever seen. The likes of which no one has seen before.
With over 100 so far from January 20th to March 27th. It's something that he's obviously quite proud of, and something that most Republicans and conservatives certainly used to complain about the utter executive lawlessness of the Barack Obama administration because of his use of executive orders, which are utterly pale in comparison, certainly at least by the numbers.
I do wonder if this is just going to be the new trend. You know how the national debt just keeps going up no matter what? Like, going forward, if this is, if you have a Congress that is constipated, they can't get anything passed, and, a president will make a lot of promises, or at least the candidate before they become president will make a lot of promises on day one, A, B, and C, and D. And a lot of the executive orders future presidents, especially if somebody comes from the other party, will do is just to undo the previous executive order, right? So basically there'll be a lot of just by default, like 50 executive orders ready to go on day one to undo some of the executive orders from the previous person, right? So I wonder if that chart that you just showed is just going to be the new thing, where the next president is going to have even more than Trump's second term, and so on and so forth, until things get sorted out in Congress to where you don't need to take this approach.
Donald Trump says he's considering ways to serve a third term as president. I was watching the news shows this weekend, and the first one up was Meet the Press. And Kristen Welker kept referring to a telephone conversation that she'd had that morning with Donald Trump, in which not only did he suggest that he was considering various ways in which he could serve a third term as president, which is, of course, utterly beyond the possibility of in any sort of constitutional way. It's not possible. But he also talked about how angry and pissed off he was at Vladimir Putin. All of this at the end of a week that started with Jeffrey Goldberg's revelation about the Signal voice chat, or group chat, rather, that we discussed on last week's show. Chat room. Or the chat room, as Major Garrett kept referring to it.
Twice.
On Face the Nation. By the way, I'm sure that Maggie had her personal time off request in ahead of time, right? Like she didn't just. But you can't take this fucking week.
No,
off.
you gotta show.
I'm sure she's pissed about it too. It's
But it's happened before.
You cannot leave this week of news to Major Garrett.
Right.
Like I like Major Garrett just fine, but you can't let him sit
room.
in the anchor chair this week.
I don't know this for sure, but I think it was because I think Biden stepped down hours after the morning shows on the Sunday, and then the following Sunday everybody was there. But if Stephanopoulos was on vacation that following weekend, he would have shown up. There are certain stories where you just have to show up. Maybe this did not rise to the level of that, but you would want to be on top of the story.
You would think. It was fairly obvious to me that what Trump was doing in his conversation with Kristen Welker on Sunday morning was just trying to make some fucking headlines so that people would stop talking about the Signal group chat. Would you like to revise your insistence last week that Mike Waltz was going to have to go? Because you were 100% confident that Mike Waltz was done. You didn't give a timeline.
By Easter. He'll be gone by Easter.
Right,
we still got a few more weeks.
Like COVID will be over by that Memorial Day that time.
And it's a late Easter this year.
It's a late Easter, so that I knew, they had a little wiggle room. But they need this guy to disappear.
You have nothing to append about that prediction?
No. I'm doubling down.
True?
He's going to be gone.
Happy Eid, by the way. I heard.
Oh, yeah, there's that little Eid thing, yes.
Don't say that to Abe. He's not.
I heard he was top 5.
It seems.
Right.
I heard he was a top 5 Muslim.
It seems racist to say that to Abe for some reason. Anyway, Mike Waltz appears to be currently holding strong. He went on the Laura Ingraham program and insisted that somehow Jeffrey Goldberg's number got sucked in to the Signal group chat. I don't know what that. I mean, obviously, he's just trying to fucking land on something that works, right?
Also, Laura Ingraham did say, "No, that's never happened to me. I don't know what you're talking about."
What does that even? What does he mean by that?
She did totally call him on his bullshit. In that moment,
sucked in is a totally made up thing.
Yeah, I just get sucked in. Although Bob explained it to me. Bob apologized for.
Yeah, if I'm doing apologia for Mike Waltz here, I think that what he's saying is. Well, I'll play the clip here and then we'll get into it.
One of the principals who was on that Signal chat, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Advisor Waltz, thank you for joining us tonight.
First of all, she says National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Advisor Waltz is an extremely awkward title that she then bestows upon him. I know that she's trying to be respectful or what have you, but anytime somebody has a title and then you have to address them by that title and it's not like governor or senator, it always feels very try-hard to me and lame.
Although, what are you supposed to say in that situation?
Say fucking Mr. Waltz if you need to say something.
Mr. feels weird, too, when you're talking directly to someone that's in your studio. It's just an awkward
Mike
thing.
So, Mike, what the fuck?
Go with Mike. You know that they have each other's fucking contact information. I'm sure they're on a first-name basis here.
They get on Signal chat rooms.
The president expressed complete confidence in you today and his entire cabinet. But how did a Trump-hating editor of The Atlantic end up on your Signal chat?
You know, Laura, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but of all the people out there, somehow this guy who has lied about the president, who has lied to Gold Star families, lied to their attorneys, and gone to Russia hoax, gone to just all kinds of links.
I want to pause for a second. The reason they hate Jeffrey Goldberg is because he's the guy who wrote the piece about Trump at Normandy or something, or at a World War II memorial in France, being disrespectful to the troops, right? Like I think that's the genesis of why, because he wrote something towards the end of the 2024 election cycle that suggested that Trump was taking a dump on the troops, right? And people saw that as fake news.
Wait, did Trump actually call veterans who died in war suckers? Is that what?
Right? Wasn't it like the
suckers?
Wasn't it like a suckers
I
and
like the
losers?
ones that didn't die.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a
no, that was McCain. I like the ones that didn't get captured.
Yeah, I mean, he said that out loud, but there was something about suckers or losers or something or
Trump. Americans who died in war are losers and suckers, and that was September of 2020. And I think that he brought that up again in 2024 as well. Anyway, that's why people call him a Trump-hating. And to be fair, he probably doesn't care for Donald Trump. I don't doubt that. That's no doubt his position.
I know, but they're saying that to suggest that he's making things up, or he's saying
or
things
that he's
negatively.
Extra, which he's not extra.
Or
he's
that like somehow the powers that be conspired to make sure that this Trump hater was included in the text. Like this is Mike Waltz saying, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but
to lie and smear the president of the United States, and he's the one that somehow gets on somebody's contact and then gets sucked into this group.
Is someone in your intel? Is someone in your intel team trying to cause trouble here? Because that's the scuttlebutt out there.
Look,
that
we have people. We have people. No, look, this is a great group. The president has a great team. This is not first term.
No, your team. I'm not talking about the other principals.
No. These were principals and a couple of staff that were coordinating, as you saw, having a policy discussion as we went forward, and then Justin. So they want to focus on this. It's embarrassing, yes. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I just talked to Elon on the way here. We've got the best technical minds looking at how this happened. But I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone. And we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't know what staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You've got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now, whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
So your staffer did not put his contact information.
No,
but how did it end up in your phone?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, but that's a pretty big problem.
That's what we've got the best technical minds, right?
That's disturbing.
And that's where, I mean, I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets
someone
sucked
sent
in,
you that
it gets
contact.
sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was?
So
on
the
chat?
person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
who
guy.
was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Okay.
So. But look, that's the part that we have to figure out, and that's the part that embarrassing, yes, but Pete and I are veterans.
All right,
we know these operations.
What do you mean? Get to the bottom of? We're at the bottom. You are at the bottom of this.
Right. I still don't think he's going to be fired.
We're going to bring some people to look into this. What do you mean?
But after watching this interview the other day, I was like, oh, man, fucking Abe's right. This guy doesn't stand a chance. Because, like, what is he talking about?
I have no idea.
Because he starts by saying, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but how did this guy end up in the group chat? And then she's like, okay, so the staffer thing, because that was some of the talk was like maybe a staffer did it. And he's like, no, it's not a staffer. It was me.
It was my project.
So wait a second. You're not a conspiracy theorist, and you cannot fathom how this guy ended up in the group chat. And then within 30 seconds, you're like, that's totally me. Like, there's no one else to blame.
I mean, they gave him the opportunity to have the fall guy situation. Like maybe one of your underlings did it. He's like, nope, they're great. It's pretty much me. And like, it's not like somebody else then forwarded. You know, sometimes that could work. You know, there'll be like an invite, and then somebody will forward it. But the original person will get the notification.
How that works because I don't have that kind of work, and Bob doesn't have work.
Right, but there are some. I mean, not through Signal, but like through Microsoft Teams. Like if you set a meeting, you can invite somebody else, but you'll get a notification. So he's ruling that out also. So like, what else could it be other than you adding this person?
So when he keeps saying they get sucked in, I think what he means is if he had Jeffrey Goldberg's contact on, like, in his Google contacts or in his iCloud contacts or whatever phone it is that he uses, right? Then then Signal is going to suck in those contacts from his regular contact list. Like that's what the suck in I think is referring to here.
My Signal here has all of my Google contacts as like people I could send a message to. I don't know any of these people on Signal. Like but it is in.
But you still have to.
They happen to be on Signal.
You would still have to select them, right? You still have to click on the person to be added to the group.
Yes.
And what his argument opens the door. Like, okay, so who else has been sucked in? Like, how many other Signal groups have there been to where some random person was sucked in, and it wasn't a reporter? It was just
and also if there's that level of they're always talking about OPSEC, right? Operational security. If the level of operational security is, I might accidentally invite a journalist or a third party because I attached the wrong name to the wrong number. Right? That, like, because what is the thing that he's trying to imply here is that there's someone within the very top levels of the administration or one of their staffers who belonged in this conversation.
He won't tell us who it is.
Who is in his phone. Who's in his phone as their name, but has Jeffrey Goldberg's telephone number attached to it, right? Like, that's what he's suggesting.
But that's not true.
If that's the case, then it's a much bigger problem,
right?
Then they're like, well, why are you focused on this? You should be focused on the fact that we bombed these fucking goober Houthis with their Iranian weapons. Like, no, the American military does that shit all the time. Like, that's cool. It's good. I'm glad that the passages through the Red Sea or whatever are relatively open again. Good work. But also the far bigger story is that we have at the top levels of the Trump administration, people having conversations on commercially available texting platforms where these are people who move through politics and through Washington power circles who probably have thousands of people in their contacts, right? These are people who have spent literally their entire lives networking, right? It's the whole point, right, is to build contacts. And I'm not saying that Mike Waltz here has some sort of extensive long-term relationship with Jeffrey Goldberg, but like, these are people who travel in the same circles. It is sort of crazy to suggest I wouldn't even have his name in my phone. Like, no, you met him at some fucking cocktail party, and yeah, maybe it's slightly uncomfortable or whatever, but you don't think that half of the people who work at that White House
20 years ago, whatever,
haven't shaken hands with Jeffrey Goldberg at some point in the last fucking 20 years? You're out of your goddamn mind. Of course you have his contact information. He's like a major power broker in American politics at the moment. And if you hope to be that for a long time, then yeah, you save his fucking number.
I think this is my favorite news story of all time.
Yes, it's hard to
beat. I can't remember being as excited about a news story as I am about this one. It's like any notification. It's like, yep, I'll read it. Click. Whatever. It's like football.
What I don't understand is, like, is Mike Waltz making this argument to the president in this way? Or you would think they would have had this conversation by now. You fat thumbed it, right? He's like, yep, I fucked up, Mr. President. And like, if the president still has confidence in him, he's already saying the words, it's embarrassing, which it is. I take full responsibility, which he should. The last thing should be just, I inadvertently added this person, and we're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Just end the story. Why?
No, Abe.
Add this layer.
I've talked to Elon Musk, and our best technical minds are on this. Like, what is the implication of I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and also I'm employing via Elon Musk the best technical minds in the world to figure out what the fuck happened here? Like, and also, this is entirely my fault.
It reminds me...
Those are three utterly incompatible thoughts that you've just expressed here.
There was a time when a friend of mine was online dating, and it turned out that one of the dudes was the boyfriend of a person she works with. And he had said... she figured it out, and he sort of figured out that she figured it out. And in a message, he said, I know my profile says single. I'm trying to get that changed. It's like, oh, you just go to settings and you click the in a relationship button.
It's not that difficult.
I just use the dating apps to make new friends.
Yeah.
I find that people are chattier here,
That's
and
right.
I'm just a big fan of chattiness.
I can't get them to change that it says single.
Yeah.
I know it's weird.
Yeah. Once you commit to a status, you
I
can't
should've
change
led
it.
with that.
And then he asked her about how she feels about first past the post voting, and
That's right.
and moved on. Anyway, you're not wrong to liken this to like the stupidity of the Connor Stallions
It
drama.
feels like that.
Like, it's not unlike that.
But at least he came clean at some point, right?
No, he didn't.
Didn't he? I thought wasn't there
I
like
still haven't watched the documentary.
I thought there was like that
The
documentary.
whole thing is just thrilling. It's just lovely. This is my favorite news story ever, I'm pretty sure.
They obviously wanted to go away. Marquayne Mullen came on Meet the Press and said much the same line that Waltz was getting at here, which is, I don't know why you guys are so interested in this silly thing that happened when we should be talking about how the Biden administration failed to take out the Houthis for 4 years when they should have been doing that work, and what a tremendous success this is by us, the Trump administration. When I think, and while the Waltz fat finger story is obviously wonderful and juicy, I think the much more interesting thing is this is as I said last week about J.D. Vance and his in private talking about how we don't want to give the freeloading Europeans any more help for no good reason, and that this conflicts with our message on Europe at this point. This was a conversation that was happening post the decider-in-chief ordering this to happen, right? Like, so in some ways, the thing that should be most humiliating for Trump is that despite this being round 2 here, despite him having, in theory, weeded out all of the little micromanagers who were there to hold Trump back in a first Trump term, what he has here is a group chat of 18 or 20 people, and also Jeffrey Goldberg, who got together and in which his vice president undermined the wisdom of the decision that he had already made, right? He said behind closed doors, are we sure this is what we want to be doing? I don't think the president fully understands how this conflicts with his other messaging on Europe. And that's when Stephen Miller shows up and is like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Right, yeah.
This is not a conversation to be had. The president said we're going to do it, so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, that's an aspect of this story that's not getting any play, but is actually far more interesting to the dynamics behind the scenes there.
That was one of the very first things, one of the very first fires the vice president tried to put out, right? Like, I think soon after the story came out, like, he was like, the president and I are in total agreement, and that, like, there was no daylight between the two of us, or I forget how he worded, but there was some statement put out by the vice president saying, like, I wasn't trying to undercut the decision that was already made. Although,
and he has to spend the next 3 years attempting to make sure that Donald Trump endorses him to be the nominee, and that there's not a competition for that job. We're not a meaningful competition for that job, at least from the MAGA world side of things. Presumably, some never Trump Republicans and Trump skeptical Republicans will put up some sort of a fight, if any exist within the party in 2028 or 2029. But Vance's main concern at this point has to be keeping the boss happy so that he can run with Trump's blessing for the next term.
Right. And one more reason why I'm still thinking that Waltz is going to go, because there's going to be a lot of pressure, because if there was a confidence vote from the cabinet, or at least the people that are participating in it, just based on the embarrassing news cycle, that they would want him out. Because it's not like everybody's like wedded to this Mike Waltz guy, right? Like, just how many national security advisors did Trump go through the first go around, right? They can replace him easily.
And isn't his seat being filled tonight in Florida? Isn't there a special
Tuesday
election?
night? Yeah, it should
Tuesday
not
night,
be nearly as close as it is. Although I imagine the Republican is going to win, but maybe there were. I mean, the Stefanik seat. I don't know what the concern was there, but like they pulled her ambassador to the UN post so she can continue serving as the representative in New York because they were concerned about that too.
That's the top line reason, right? In theory, is that they don't want to lose her vote in Congress. I'm not convinced that once we see who they haven't announced who the next nominee to go to the UN is.
Yeah, I haven't seen any news on that.
My suspicion is that we're going to get someone who is maybe who would have less compunction about promoting a radically America First MAGA agenda at the UN, whereas at least Stefanik is not fucking insane, at least when it comes to like Israel stuff and the Ukraine stuff.
So you think that they're going to try to find someone more belligerent?
I don't doubt it for a second.
Because, I mean, okay, so wasn't she one of the early, like, I remember Stefanik's name, like, she was basically, like, nominated to that position very early after the election in November. Like, this was basically like a thing that would work out. Like,
right, but would she be the Tucker Carlson or the J.D. Vance pick to go to the UN? Like, yeah, she's a good soldier. She'll do what the administration wants her to do. But does she believe it? Like, is she a belligerent isolationist, to use your phrase?
Right.
And the answer is no.
Right. That's true. But if they were at the decision-making phase, right, like this was in like mid-November and they're deciding that, I could see this argument
well, this is just Trump shooting the shit at Mar-a-Lago, being like, well, Stefanik's been a loyal soldier. I got to put her somewhere. How about the UN?
I know, but then why would you...
I had Nikki Haley there. Like,
right.
I don't think there was there probably was no conversation about the isolationist belligerence at that point. And now that's becoming a more prominent thing. And also it's like a headache to have to fill the fucking seat when you only have this 3 Republican majority wiggle room.
Right.
Like, just put her back in the House and we'll figure out something else for her to do. And then put somebody much more belligerent over at the UN.
It'll be interesting to see who they do pick to replace her, but just the timing of it seems odd. Like, cause I think, they pulled some other candidate when it became obvious that they didn't have the votes. I forget who it was, but like, there's not a vote issue with her. So the timing is so late in the game. I mean, we're almost into April, and to pull it this late, I mean, maybe that cover story is just that, but like it seemed to make sense. Like, there must be some concern internally that that seat is going to be more competitive than they are willing to risk. Yeah.
Well, and also I guess Hochul has the ability she sets the agenda there, right? In terms of like when the vote takes place. So it would be presumably with a Democrat making that sort of decision, they will arrange it so that it is most favorable to the Democrats. Although I can't imagine that it matters.
Stefanik was like in leadership, right?
Right.
She gave up all that, and somebody else has already filled it. No one's going to like say, okay, I was just holding your seat for you. Here you go. Like, is she going to be given some assurance that she's going to be able to get back some of her perks?
I don't know. I imagine she got some. I mean, like during the State of the Union, she wasn't even with the members of Congress. She was like with the cabinet. Like, she must have thought, like, what the fuck? Like, I kissed your ass all these years for this? Let's see here. Trump is trying to de-wokeify the Smithsonian. I will say that the list of things that he is mad at the Smithsonian about is slightly more compelling than the list of things that he was mad about with regards to Voice of America, although not meaningfully so. And like, I'm sorry, but all of this complaining about like fucking woke academics and their treatment of American history as some sort of and trying to reimagine it through a racially sensitive lens, or the argument would be made that they're reimagining it through the lens of critical race theory, which I think is largely overblown and silly. It strikes me as such immature baby stuff to be like, I don't like the name of this this display that was put up at the Smithsonian because I think it's brainwashing the youths of America to believe the wrong things about our past. It's like it's just and it's the same thing anytime I hear about somebody trying to ban books in schools because they don't like the phrasing of something or another. It's like, do you really think that any of that fucking matters in terms of the building of the young American mind? Right. People are either too dumb to realize that, and they're not retaining any of the information anyway, or they're bright enough to realize that they're being sold a bill of goods and that they will seek out other information elsewhere. Like, I just don't see it as something to really overly concern yourself with, that the Smithsonian is putting up exhibits that are counter to your political project in some way. Get the fuck over it. There will be other Smithsonian exhibits that do speak to the things that matter to you, I would imagine.
Oh, there will be Smithsonian exhibits.
They also are trying to, in addition to defunding the Voice of America, they're going to try to defund NPR and PBS, which is an old argument that's been had for generations now. And one that, like, anytime they go to defend NPR and PBS, it's very funny because they're like, well, NPR only gets 1% of its funding from the federal government. So what's the big deal? It's like, okay, well, then what's the big deal? Like, if you're only getting 1% of your funding, and I know, and then the follow on is, well, but in rural America, that it's a much larger percentage of some of these smaller stations out there in the sticks get 30% of their funding from national sources. And it's like, all right, but like, who the fuck out there is listening to these NPRs in the middle of nowhere anyway? Like, I recognize that
they can get it on the internet.
Right, it's all on the internet anyway. It's a valuable service, less so in recent years. I don't listen to it nearly as much as I once did. And like, at the same time that I really appreciate PBS and like their documentary work, especially.
Daniel Tiger.
Yeah, Daniel Tiger's fucking
George.
Great. Curious George, all-time goat. I do have some sympathy for the idea that in this country we don't need publicly funded media in that way, and it's an anachronism now more than ever, right? In an age of fully democratized, essentially, ability to produce content and do journalism. I'm not sure that it's necessary. I like Frontline a lot. I imagine that Frontline would be just fine. The John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation
and viewers like you
and viewers like me will find a way to keep pumping money into that sort of programming if it's valuable to us.
Abe, did you know that for like 20 years of my life, I thought Viewers Like You was a company?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Capital V, capital L, capital Y. Viewers Like You.
Viewers Like You.
So, yeah, that probably speaks to my longtime thoughts on PBS and NPR, allowing me to not get too worked up about this. But again, like, you go look at the reasons why, and it's like, oh, fuck off. Like, get over yourself. It's fine if NPR and PBS are somewhat hostile to your ideological project long term. Fucking who cares? Present a compelling alternative viewpoint, and get on with your day.
I will say, though, if everything becomes for profit, I mean, this is not like the golden age of journalism, right? Where everything becomes just clicks and sensational headlines and, you know, Instagram and social media. Like, it's good to have some avenue to where, like, the focus is just on reporting something. Like, you know, it's very, like, no frills, just the PBS NewsHour. It's like a good idea to have something out there. Now, if it's mostly or entirely funded by private donations and the public, you know, whenever they can, that's fine. If the government throws in a couple of dollars just to fill the gaps, kind of like they do with the education department with those Title I schools, like just kind of, you know, mostly it's handled at the local level, but in areas where the math doesn't work, like, provide some assistance so the system works. Like, I'm a very big ecosystem person. So, like, if, I'm for whatever is for the betterment of the system, and this seems to be doing damage to that.
The thing that they're complaining about bias at PBS or bias at NPR, is almost certainly a function of very early audience capture in the way that we talk about audience capture with social media or with podcasting platforms or with Fox News and CNN or whatever. Like MSNBC produces that content because it's what their audience demands.
Right.
Fox News produces the content that they produce because it's what their audience demands. PBS makes frontline documentaries that have a particular point of view because it's what their audience fucking demands, right? Like in some important way, when you do rely upon donors to be sent to be cutting your checks, you're already beholden to what the audience demands are. The reason that NPR leans left and PBS lean left is because their audience leans left. Like, it's not these people always get the directionality precisely backwards, in my opinion. The thing that is driving the bus here is audience ideology, not the ideology of the people at the top of it. Like the fact that Catherine What's-Her-Name, who's the president of NPR and goes before Congress and has to defend fucking bad tweets that she did 15 years ago, where she was overtly liberal. Like, she got that job because of the audience of NPR, not because of some secret cabal of liberals that are trying to drive NPR in a certain ideological direction. I have no doubt about that. And so to some extent, your argument for a publicly funded media is beside the point. While I agree with you, it would be nice if it existed in the way that the BBC exists, right? Where everybody has to pay this fucking TV fee, basically, and then BBC produces straight down the middle news. That's because they get so little of their funding from the federal government in the first place. They aren't actually able to hold to that sort of a unbiased framework, right? Like, in my romantic conception of things, yes, the PBS NewsHour should be free to every household in America, and it should be a down-the-middle news program. But that's not the reality. The reality is that it has a liberal slant because of who its audience has been for the last 20 years, and it will continue to have that slant, and only more so if you take away the federal funding from it. If instead you say, this is going to be the voice of America, but for America, and you're going to have to maintain a strict down-the-middle news presentation here, and you're going to strip away the corporate funding and the different funding mechanisms, whether it's from private donations or from various charities sending their money in, then you're talking about a different conversation, I think.
It should be noted that down the middle is not the desired objective of everyone. Like, I think people are so used to the news being presented in such a way that, like, if you do present it down the middle, it's going to feel like you're being biased. Like, if you're left of center, down the middle seems like right of center. Right of your center. And same thing if you're on the right of center, like, everything seems to be left, so like it seems biased to you. Like, it's kind of like in the eye of the viewer. And so, like, what does objective reporting or down the middle reporting look like to most people? It's going to look like it's biased in some way.
Right. Well, and that speaks directly to the things that the Trump administration was complaining about with Voice of America, which is just, hey, you're noting the existence of a trans person, and therefore this is a radical leftist organization.
Right.
This is from Reason.com, Reason Magazine. Headline, don't count on quitting social media to make your life better. A new meta-analysis finds no significant effects of social media abstinence interventions on positive affect, negative affect, or life satisfaction. In other words, everybody who complains about social media making everyone's lives worse, a new meta-analysis suggests that leaving social media doesn't improve one's overall sense of positive well-being. What
are people replacing all that time with? Something even like more destructive? Are they getting like on heroin or something? Like, are people just reading books or like kicking rocks outside?
People are miserable. And then they're on social media.
Right.
So they're miserable. But then if they're not on, they're still miserable.
Yeah,
it's not the social media that's making them miserable. It's their life.
Right. You will, the water finds its level, right? You will find your misery, whether you're on social media or not. I firmly believe that. Also, I know that I am better off when I'm not on Facebook or Twitter. Like I know that it immiserates me.
Yeah, but instead you're watching the slot machines. It's the same thing.
No, I'm not saying that. Well, first of all, it's not the same thing. I am not actively immiserated by watching idiots gamble away $15,000 in 20 minutes. Whereas I can be made to feel bad about my fellow humans with 5 minutes of scrolling on Twitter. And like no amount of, I mean, I suppose a very thorough curating of that feed by me, I could improve that experience, but I'd rather simply take it off my phone instead. I'm not saying that my overall happiness level is automatically higher since I took Twitter off my phone. Probably not. I find
other stuff's happened.
Right. I find ways, right? Misery finds its level.
I just mean, like, you took Twitter off your phone, and now the world is falling apart. So it's, like, not a fair
I just know
scientific.
That if I still had Twitter on my phone,
yeah,
it would be literally hours a day. Like, you could go to my little chart or whatever in my settings, and it would show, oh, you spent 2 hours and 45 minutes scrolling Twitter today. And it would just be an experience, a purely negative experience, right? And so that's why I'm glad I took Facebook off my phone for the same reason, because I found that, like, first of all, I was not seeing any updates from anyone in my life that mattered, and instead I was just getting a random feed of shit that I didn't particularly care to engage with. Or when I found myself engaging with it, I was like, wait a second. The robots might know that they've tricked my brain into wanting to engage with it.
That's right.
But, like, if I'm being intentional about this at all, I would never fucking seek this out. Like, and this is, I recognize as bad for me. So, like, I think if I found myself being asked questions like, are you more or less happy now that you're off social media? My answer would be, I don't know. Like, and if you could measure it objectively, my answer would be, no, probably about the same.
Right.
But also, my experience of being on social media, I know to be profoundly negative and bad for me. So, like, just because you cannot scientifically measure that I'm happier off of social media, I know that interacting with this thing is a net negative for me. I don't care what the fucking study says.
This study reminds me of, for many years, every 2 years there'd be a study that comes out saying that coffee is good for you, coffee is bad for you. Coffee is good for you, coffee is bad for you. They kind of did this with wine also. I mean, I think the most recent one was like no amount of alcohol is good for you, but for a while they're like,
alcohol's bad.
A little wine is not too shabby, and, you know, back and forth. Like, all of the previous studies I've read about social media use was that it's bad, like actually bad for you. And so now they're saying that it's not necessarily not bad for you. It's just like, it's not, like, if you stop doing it, it's not going to be any better.
I think so. I think it's because of what Lori was saying, which is that since I've taken these social media apps off my phone, the thing that has replaced it in my personal attention economy is YouTube. He
still can't just sit quietly and not be entertained. He must be entertained. It must happen.
I know.
It can't wait.
All right, we don't have to have this fucking conversation.
Well,
but like, if I sit on the couch with a book, I get yelled at. Because
you must be entertained. You can't just sit.
It's not about being entertained. It's about having my attention engaged in some way, and that's not true. I also sit around. I don't know what the difference is
between what I said and what you said, but whatever.
Just thinking plenty. But, like, the reason that I mean, whatever. We don't have to get into it, like I said. But, like, I get yelled at for having a book open when the alternative is, like, having YouTube open. It's like, well, I'm less likely to get yelled at for having YouTube going, so I'm going to put YouTube on. But, like, the thing that I've replaced social media with is just YouTube.
Right.
And it's not just the gambling stuff. There's, like, woodworking videos that I like to watch a lot. There's different music channels that I like to interact with. But, like, it's an upgrade in terms of whether or not it is immiserating to me, right?
It's way
and so,
better.
Like, that's important.
I do wonder,
well, mostly I think it's also stuff you're choosing. Like, I mean, obviously you select of whatever. YouTube, because it's longer than just a post, a picture, a short video, generally, you're like, okay, what are the options? I choose this to watch for 5 or 10 minutes.
Right. Crucially, I don't allow, like with Netflix, I turn off the play the next thing automatically thing. With YouTube, it's Like that drives me literally up a wall. If I find myself on a device where my YouTube is not set up to not play the next thing, like it's like an ice pick to the brain if they start playing something for me. Like, no, fuck you. I will choose. Yes, you can give me a list of things to choose from, but holy shit, don't just play some random next thing. That doesn't work for me at all.
You know, I do wonder if they did a follow-up study on this to see, like, what is the substitute? Like the biggest buckets would be what? Like television, YouTube, video games maybe, right? Like
Books.
Books, I'm sure that's like a smaller bucket, right?
I mean, I think a lot of people, just from my noticing in my stupid life, the amount of clients I have that bring a book with them to their appointment is higher than it was in the recent past.
Okay.
Like the recent smartphone past. It used to be everybody because there were no smartphones. But I think more people are consciously bringing books.
I would be shocked if those people, if they just focused on the people who have substituted like social media or other similar habits with books, are not feeling better. Like if they're also feeling like shit, then the whole scheme is failed. Like, I mean, what can you do? Like if reading,
they're reading books about the world falling apart and how bad of a parent they are.
Yeah, if they're picking like those kind of books. But there were those escapists. What was that?
People are going to find.
What was that smut book that we were talking about? That author that got into trouble with.
They don't bring
Elon
those
Musk.
to the salon so much.
Bring her Kindle.
Which book are we talking about?
The one where she got in trouble because there was a
like Elon Musk
sympathizing
was talked
character,
about, and like what's going on with these migrants with shaky papers?
No, I imagine most people are not replacing social media with life enriching other things. They are replacing social media with other bullshit on their phone. And like, if I replace social media with one of those addictive phone games that I can't stop when I download them, like, yeah, eventually I have to delete that too, because it just also becomes an attention sink, and I have to get rid of it rather than just, you know, I'm to some extent I'm incapable of responsibly managing my time with these devices. More info about that Venezuelan who seems to have just been a soccer player and had his tattoo confused with a gang symbol. Jersey? Jerce? Herce? I don't know.
Herce
Reyes Barrios, a 36-year-old professional soccer player and coach from Venezuela, was among the deportees. His attorney, Lynette Tobin, told Morning Edition he followed all the rules when seeking asylum in the U.S. last year. According to her, after fleeing violence in Venezuela, Reyes Barrios scheduled an appointment, waited in Mexico for 4 months, and presented himself at the border as asked. Despite having no criminal record in his home country, the father of two was detained in a maximum security prison while awaiting his asylum hearing. DHS wants the public to believe these people are criminals and gang members. So if they have proof of that, why wouldn't they release it to the public, she said. His family learned he had been deported after seeing him in photos of the men deported by the U.S. to El Salvador. In February, the Trump administration made similar claims that the first group of Venezuelan migrants it sent to the military base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, were members of Tren de Aragua. It later acknowledged in court filings that many of the people sent there were low-threat individuals, despite the administration's claim that it was sending the worst of the worst there. The Department of Homeland Security has not yet responded to NPR's request for comment on Reyes Barrios' case. So this comes down to, and the defense of this from Trump people is, well, we sent 300 people to Venezuela, and if just one of them was not as bad as the 299 gangbangers, then no harm, no foul. Right?
That seems to be the opinion of a good chunk of Americans, too. Like I saw on Face the Nation some polling, and you know, Trump's numbers are sliding when it comes to the other stuff, but when it comes to immigration, people don't seem to be sweating the details of how they're going about getting rid of people.
Crucially, Abe, and not to belabor the point here after I ranted about it not that long ago, but we don't do civil liberties based on public polling for a very good reason. Right. And for me, that's like kind of the best part of this country.
But it is still concerning when a sizable chunk of the population does not seem to care about that sort of thing, where it gives political cover to the administration to do whatever they want. I mean, the courts will step in, but it's a bit concerning to see 58% or whatever the number was that are like, yeah, whatever. Even if you get some wrong, it's totally fine.
The rabble are not to be trusted on these sorts of questions, and they have never been to be trusted on these sorts of questions. The old thing about democracy being two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner is as silly and diminishing to the notion of self-rule in an important way. But when it comes to individual and immutable human rights, right, the things that give us or the thing that makes us individual humans worthy of dignity and respect as distinct individuals from one another, that's where democracy tends to break down. Right. And that's why you have these sorts of things that are enshrined in the Constitution as beyond any question of what the rabble fucking thinks about it. And it is despicable for an administration to suggest even that it's kind of okay if a few innocents get swept up with all of the bad guys. Like, that's why it's due process. Everyone gets it. And if these guys are as bad as they say they are, then it is worth spending the time to make sure that they are properly sent away from this country, and that no one who ought not be isn't.
It's very nearly 10 o'clock, and the children have not.
Well, maybe they just fucked off and went to bed by themselves.
I doubt it. Will you shout at them?
Hey, kids! Go to bed!
I would shout, but I'm not good at that.
Anyway, and even if it turns out that this fucking guy does have a gang tattoo on his arm and has in fact done crimes and therefore shouldn't be in the country, that doesn't matter to me either, right? Whether all 300 of them were awful murderous, rapist gangbangers or not, the process is the thing that matters here. The process is what separates us from these fucking countries where they just load everybody into fucking vans and disappear them forever. Anyway, I didn't really have a plan for things to talk about tonight, besides all of the Trump executive orders and stuff that have been going on. Anything in the news this week that struck your fancy worth talking about, Abe?
Over in France, did you read about Marie Le Pen?
Yeah, she's going to go to prison, and she's not going to be able to run in the next national election over there, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's a house arrest, but the big story there is that basically she's going to be prevented from running for 5 years, basically preventing her from running in 27. And there's been a lot of I don't want to say blowback, but there seems to be like this concerted effort from the right in like multiple countries to like try to defend her over this case that people don't know about. I mean, I don't know anything about her embezzlement case. Like, it seems like it doesn't matter whether or not she's guilty or not. People are just assuming that there's some sort of...
No, it must be the deep state, the liberal deep state in France holding back the good right-winger.
Right. And it's interesting that, France, and then also wasn't it in Brazil, Bolsonaro, it seems like over there they seem to have stronger court systems there where they're able to hold people to account more so than they do here.
Do we know what this case is about? Why? What is she convicted
So she was found guilty of embezzling European Union funds. So I guess, I don't know how they proved that, but that she was found guilty of it. So it's a money-related thing. It's not like she beat somebody over the head with it, but I guess you can't steal money and run for election.
There's if you Google, and I'll put the link in the show notes so you don't have to Google, but if you Google New York Times, The Partnership, there's an article that came out a couple of days ago. It's very long. I don't know, 20,000 words maybe. The Partnership, The Secret History of the War in Ukraine. This is the untold story of America's hidden role in Ukrainian military operations against Russia's invading armies. And I'm only a third or so of the way through it so far, having not finished it. I probably can't or shouldn't speak to it as a whole. I will say it is interesting in its description of the beginning stages of the war and the amount of American military involvement in terms of our working with the Ukrainians to give them specific targets and provide them with intelligence that seems to have been perhaps one of the, if not the primary reason that they found as much success early as they did, much to the surprise of it's a combination of obvious Russian ineptitude and failures of the Russian military, but also a great deal of American intervention happening under the radar, behind the scenes, to provide them with basically all of the relevant intelligence that they needed.
Not too far behind the scenes for us
to find early success.
I haven't read the article, but they're making the case that the U.S. provided the support after Russia invaded Ukraine. Is that right? Like, this is in the days and months and years after the invasion.
Yes.
I thought that was somewhat of a known thing. Like, I thought
yes, and also it's the extent to which that was going on, and just how fully integrated the two militaries were behind the scenes. Not in terms of any American troops ever being in harm's way in any actual way, obviously, but just in terms of how much information we were providing them, and then also, what was always known was the weapons, right? There was always a fairly detailed explanation of exactly what we're giving to them, in part, apparently, to satisfy Vladimir Putin, to make sure that we weren't crossing any red lines. And then 6 months later, we would sort of push the red line a little bit further back and give them some better weaponry there. But behind the scenes, we were crossing lines that Putin probably wouldn't have been. But he must have known, with the success that they were having, just what was going on. I was reading briefly something that Matt Taibbi put on Substack in response to this article, and he keeps just about everything he does behind a paywall, so I couldn't read anywhere near the whole thing. But quoting from the article that he posted, this is headlined, "Biden lied about everything, including nuclear risk, during Ukraine operation. Sourced to tone-deaf U.S. officials, a massive New York Times expose reveals an unprecedented betrayal of American voters, but also of Ukraine." And this is from the last paragraph before he goes behind the paywall. "They risked our lives and our children's lives, knowingly, repeatedly, and for the worst possible reason, politics. Afraid to admit a mistake, they planned individual excuses while letting bureaucratic inertia expand the conflict. Worse, as was guessed at on this site late last year, the Biden administration, after last November's election, increased the risk of global conflict by, quote, expanding the operations box to allow ATACMS and British Storm Shadow strikes into Russia," end quote, in order to shore up his Ukraine project. If you check this secret history against contemporaneous statements of American and European leaders, you'll find the scale of the lies beyond comprehension. Taibbi's criticism here largely seems to be that the United States and Europe were risking World War III and potentially the lives of American soldiers by their intervention here, even though it was happening behind the scenes. To which I say, you are a fucking coward and a quisling, Matt Taibbi, and I have no idea what the fuck is going on, except to say that you are so fully committed to the bit here. The bit being a total suspicion and expression of cynical skepticism that the United States and Western Europe can ever do good, right? That our institutions are so thoroughly corrupt and so thoroughly compromised by the New World Order or the global intelligence apparatus, that nothing we do can be anything but bad, and that is the audience that you have sought out, and is the only audience that you speak to anymore, and it's fucking awful. I don't know what the fuck is going on with this guy, except that explanation, right? Which is that he has found this lane, and it is a very lucrative lane for him personally, and he can get tens of thousands of people to give him $50 a year on Substack to hear their opinions about the world spoken back to them, because it is simply there's just to suggest that American involvement in the war in Ukraine was risking World War III, rather than Vladimir Putin invading a European neighbor being the thing that is risking World War III is just fucking mind-boggling to me. Like, where are we going? Where you choose to put the causal chain here and the beginning of it, and who holds the blame for these things? Like, I know that there are nuanced takes on the reasons for the start of the Ukraine war, but to never even gesture in the direction that maybe Russia shouldn't have fucking done this in the first place, and that is the inciting event, even if you have to go back to 2014, right? And
maybe that's what's behind the paywall, is the nuance.
Yeah, probably that's what's behind the paywall. I've never been gladder to have not... Like, I know this is hypocritical of me. Go to brainiron.substack.com to subscribe for more from us. But, like, I'm so glad that I never forked over $50 to give to Matt Taibbi.
I would have been so mad. I've never liked him.
And it's, I don't know, whatever. It doesn't fucking
Always been
matter.
A cranky pants.
It doesn't change the fact that I think that he's right and good about stuff until about 5 years ago.
Doesn't mean he's not a cranky
do
pants.
you think that this is an audience capture issue, or does he actually sincerely believe this? Because I can't rule out the possibility that he actually believes this stuff.
Yeah, I think that
it can turn
it is
into
both
that,
things.
though.
I think he firmly believes that the intelligence community does no good in the world, and that the entire apparatus of American state power is beholden to that intelligence community, and therefore anything that we do on the world stage is compromised and corrupt. I think he can sincerely believe that, and also have cultivated an audience of fucking 25,000 people who are willing to give him $50 a month to make him personally quite wealthy, as he continues to have that opinion about the world. And it's a shame, because what it means is that that opinion will never be challenged or changed by anything that happens in the real world, right? The incentives are all precisely backwards for that.
That is, by the way, an awful business model. Like, if I'm paying $50 just to hear the analysis of somebody, it has to be very limited. Like, I mean, you would want a broader spectrum of opinions that a newspaper would provide, with not only with the news, but also like whenever people chime in with their comments, their opinions. Like, just $50 for one
there
person?
There might not be a harder working man on Substack. Like, he puts out a tremendous amount of content, and he always has like 3 or 4 other side projects going that are of incredible scope. Like, he's a workaholic who puts in the hours, and like I don't downplay that at all. Matt Iglesias Matt Iglesias puts out something new every fucking day. Like, I don't like the idea of having to pay $50 a month.
Really, they're churning out daily stuff?
Or $50 a year.
It's their job.
Yeah, it's his whole job. Like, and Iglesias puts something out pretty regular. Nate Silver on Substack puts stuff out.
I have to do fucking haircuts every day. You have to do whatever it is you do every day. They have to write shit every day
on a regular basis, like 3 or 4 times a week. Like, I'm not saying that it's not a grift in that sense. Like, the
no,
work
I'm not
is being
saying.
done.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. I'm saying, like, as a consumer proposition, like, I don't think I'm more informed by spending so much money into just the opinions of one person or one source. Like, it just seems to be the math doesn't work. But I guess it worked for enough people.
If you enjoy the writing,
it's the same as, like, people like to join a club, you know? Like, they like, people don't pay Matt Taibbi $60 a year because they really appreciate his opinion and analysis. It's, in part, hey, thanks. Like, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'd like to see more of it. Like, I think that plays a role as well. And, like, whatever it is, it's a relatively small fee.
So this is a year, it's not a month.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, if I said $60 a month, that was wrong. I think it's $5 a month
that's
or
fine.
whatever. It's $60 or $70 a year. But still, like, you can become, like, you only need a few thousand subscribers at that level to make a perfectly decent living. Speaking of, so fucking where you at, everybody? brainiron.substack.com. Go help us out. But anyway, the word that springs to mind reading that from Taibbi and his analysis of anything Ukraine war related is just quisling, because he just constantly seems completely unwilling to contemplate this.
He's like your buddy Grayson on the Facebook.
How?
just cranky pants about everything.
Mm.
Just, this is bad because everything's bad. What about Cambodia?
Anyway, don't go read Matt Taibbi on the New York Times article
Good
about
news, you can't. It's behind a paywall.
the Ukraine war, but do go read the article itself. I'll make sure there's a link to it in the show notes. I'm not, again, the secret history of the war in Ukraine, nothing about the first third of it strikes me as particularly secret, as Abe was alluding to. It doesn't surprise me at all that the United States was deeply involved in providing intelligence to the Ukrainian military. It's cool to get names and anecdotes to go with what were mostly just assumptions before. But yeah, not terribly surprising either. I don't have any Strassman this week, and it is getting late, so I guess we should talk about movies and stuff. You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Substack, brainiron.substack.com, where you can listen to, a little bit later this week, you'll be able to hear the Billboard Hot 100 game, the latest episode, in which we travel back to March of 1996 and have about as much fun reliving spring 1996 in a musical sense as we have at any other trip down memory lane via that game. That's brainiron.substack.com for that. It will not show up in your regular podcast feed. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig, tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com. For more from Mark. Abe, I have to assume you went to the movies, did you?
Yes, I did. I went to go see A Working Man. This is the latest from Jason Statham. He's basically he was like the beekeeper last year. He's basically like, hey, I'm just some working man, and I'm also very good at fighting. This particular movie, my boy Sylvester Stallone, one of the co-writers for this movie.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah? Still working?
Yeah, still working. So Statham plays a construction worker. Like he's like the foreman of this construction outfit.
A Working Man, by the way, outdid Snow White at the box office this weekend.
Boy, Snow White is struggling.
No, it didn't.
Yeah,
Oh,
A Working Man,
$15.5
million. Snow White, $14.3 million. Number 3 this week, a movie called The Chosen Last Supper. So
Easter stuff.
Yeah, that
right?
Easter movie is not part of my subscription. I could not watch it. I had to pay fork over another additional $15, which I wasn't willing to do.
That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, every now and again they'll have some Fathom event or special thing that's not part of the regular release.
You know why? Because they're filling that theater with church groups.
I'm sure they are.
That's what's going on there.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for interrupting your retelling of this very important movie.
So, if you've seen Taken, this is like a rehash of Taken. The construction,
Taken is so good, though.
The construction company is run by this family that Jason Statham is close to, and there's an 18-year-old daughter that works there part time, and she's like, "Oh, my future is bright." Blah blah blah. She gets kidnapped and drugged by some Russian hoodlums. It's been a while since they've had a Russian hoodlums with the accent. This is harkens back to the 80s, 90s movies where it's Eastern European bad guys.
Yep.
And Jason Statham, he stopped being a construction man, and he's got a background as a a Marine commando for the Royal whatever over there in Britain. So he's kind of like that Daisy Ridley movie that I saw a couple months ago where she's cleaning high-rise windows, but she also was prior military, and that comes in handy. Anyways, he goes on this crusade to save that 18-year-old girl for the family, the construction company, and he's killing bad guy after bad guy after bad guy. There's a funny scene where he gets to the big bad at the end, and they're all frustrated by Jason Statham. What's your deal, man? All of this for some girl? What's the idea? Come on, we're just trying to have a little fun. Their whole scheme is that they have bartenders and other people scouting for unsuspecting women, and they take pictures of them, and very rich, gross dudes are drug that particular one and send her my way. So that's their whole scheme. And they're thinking, hey, we're just running a business here. Why are you so upset, you know? And Jason Statham was like, you don't have daughters, do you? Like, and he's like, no, I don't. It's like, so
as a father of a daughter, Jason Statham had no
yeah,
choice.
he basically was like, you would understand if you had like, as if you needed like that connection to understand how fucked up this whole operation is. And he just shoots them dead, and he saves the day. She's fine, and you know, everybody lives happily ever after. So it's like, if you're into,
they should then immediately cut to all of the mothers of the men that Jason Statham has ruthlessly slain in his quest to show their deep and abiding pain that they experience at the death of their children.
There are a lot of great, like, shitty Russian accents throughout. So, it's a very typical movie. Like, if you're into that sort of thing, Jason Statham does the same thing.
If you're into movies,
into typical things. Yes.
I wonder if there's a reason why Jason Statham is playing these. Like, normally it's just be a cop, right? Like an ex-cop.
By the way, he sheds the working man thing like 4 minutes into the movie. Like, the movie starts with, all right, huddle up.
There was a kidnapping. He had
the
to.
Kidnapping, I mean, the story begins very quickly. He just, like, does a big pep speech. All right, buddy, we have a big day. We have some inspectors coming. Make sure everybody does your job. And then the hoodlums come and start causing trouble. And he's like, I guess I have to start kicking ass now.
Why waste time?
Yeah, I recognize that I am two pussies here in this regard, but I would be so, even knowing with total certainty that it was a righteous kill, I would be so devastated by the fact that I had just ended a life.
Oh, you're like that Gaetog guy, the
because
Buddhist.
Once you kill somebody, you become numb to it, so you don't care anymore. You can just kill the people. So, like, yeah, you would be devastated, but then you'd shake it off and kill somebody else and be fine, and they're bad guys. So,
yeah, you're like the security guard who's too sheepish to kill.
guard.
You know, the Buddhist.
Yeah,
you got to kill somebody.
maybe.
Statham had no problem, no qualms about killing all those dudes.
No, because he was in the Marines.
Yes.
He's killed people before. No big deal. Totally fine.
there should be less killing of humans. That's my
Well, then, whatever. Don't kidnap daughters.
my position. And I think that even the kidnapping of a daughter does not give a person free rein to do hundreds of murders along the way in
Well, I hope
retribution.
our daughter is never kidnapped.
Oh, there was one more, just to show how ridiculous this movie is. So his wife is dead, and his father-in-law blames him for it. So basically, wherever you go, violence follows. You're just a dangerous
Sounds like
dude,
it.
and he wants to take custody away from him. Because he's got a daughter of his own, and he's, so the father-in-law wants to, through the courts, take away his daughter, but he goes and saves him because he's about to die, like in a fire, and he's like, I guess you're not half bad, like you saved me that one time. Basically, that kind of cleared up the conflict they had. They never went back to the father-in-law after that. They're like, all right, I saved you that one time. Fuck off. Leave me alone.
We cool.
This run of awful movies that you've experienced the last couple months, why isn't the AMC doing or are they doing classic films?
No,
and you're just not going to watch them? Or?
No, I would watch if they had any, but it's just not a lot of...
You need to write an email to the manager over there and be like, look...
Oh, the manager can't help that.
Things are pretty rough these days. Can't we get some bullshit art films or maybe some old classics you got banging around back there? I'll bring you a DVD if you want. I just like coming to the theater. I'll get my soda. I'll sit here. Just put something else on.
It is a tough stretch. There's a Minecraft movie. I think that's a big release next weekend. I don't know anything about Minecraft. I'm not going to watch that, so I'm going to have to find some other thing. But there's just not a lot of interesting titles out there.
And you're steadfast in your commitment to not see Snow White, apparently.
Yes, I'm not going to see Snow White. Yes.
It is so funny, the things that you were like, no, don't be ridiculous. Why would I? I wouldn't see that.
I mean, I haven't seen it in the Frozens. I haven't seen any of this. There's certain movies that are like, I'm good. I don't need to see that.
All right. Television-wise, besides White Lotus and the NCAA tournament, anything worth reporting?
I'm slowly catching up on Severance, but I'm still not done with it. Still digesting.
How far in?
I think I just got done with a 7th episode.
The one where she goes to that rundown old coal miners town or whatever?
That was, no, I think it's the one with the guy's wife who's like in this purgatory kind of state. Yeah.
7 was the one with the wife.
Yeah.
And then 8 is going to be the one where Patricia Arquette makes her reappearance. Was 7, what did you think? I hated that episode. What did you think about it?
It was fine. I think I recall you shitting on it, but I don't remember having any problems with it.
Yeah.
It was fine.
I just didn't fucking care.
But the show is losing a little steam. I'm just like, I don't know what the hell's going. Like, it's just, I don't know. I'll finish this season, but not my favorite show. So
all
far.
right, White Lotus.
We're not going to talk about Scream?
Okay, Scream first, right? All right, so we watched Scream 5, which is the Scream that came out in 2022.
Reboot.
Was a requel as described in the movie itself, because of course it being a Scream movie, it has to talk about itself in endless fashion. It must be as meta as possible. It has to do it
as much as the first one.
So the first one was good and clever and interesting, and this was a pile of shit.
It wasn't.
I know Lori likes it. I don't know why.
Because I love Scream.
I liked Scream.
That's what I wanted you to watch the original one first.
I don't think you appreciate. I've seen the first Scream like probably a dozen times. I'm quite familiar with Scream. I liked it, and I like its sequel just fine. After that, the franchise goes downhill, and I don't think it is revived in any meaningful way by the 5th installment. About which first of all, it was not scary at all. It's not a scary movie.
Well, no, it's not gonna be.
Sometimes they are scary.
No, the first one was scary when we were 13.
And worst of all, I just did not care. Like it was like Lori paused it at one point and was like, "Okay, so who do you think the killers are?" And I realized, I don't care at all. Like normally I would be excited about trying to figure out what's going on here, and like what is the movie trying to get me to think versus not think, and like can I figure out where this screenplay is trying to lead me. And this time around it was like, oh no, I just don't care at all. It doesn't matter. I hate all of these characters. They don't matter. And yeah, probably it's the boyfriend, because they want you to think it's the boyfriend, but then like, do they want you to think it's the boyfriend so much that it can't therefore possibly be the boyfriend, and they're going to out-clever you by out-clevering themselves? It's like, no, as it turns out, it's just the first movie again. Like the whole thing is just the first movie again. On top of the first movie. Facebook announced this week that they're putting Facebook back into your Facebook. Don't know if anybody saw that. I don't have the app on my phone anymore, but apparently I saw a thing like the old exhibit meme where it was Facebook is going to have a new feed in your Facebook that's just your friends and family's posts. And it's like, well, wait a second. We used to just call that Facebook.
Why can't you just choose that, like Facebook Classic? You know, just like that's just your regular experience. By the way, I think I've seen
Scream 5 is just they put Scream in Scream, and that is it's literally the whole movie. I know, it's so fucking stupid though, and also
I'm sorry I suggested we watch it.
No, it's fine. I'm glad that I saw it. I'm glad. Like water finds its level, as does my personal misery levels. I like engaging with things that I ultimately find distasteful. I didn't like the fucking movie, but that doesn't mean that I'm not glad that I've now seen it.
I think I've seen that movie in theaters, and I talked about it in this segment, but I don't recall who the killer was.
I think we talked about it.
It was fucking the Quaid, the Nepo baby
right.
Quaid.
Yeah. By the way,
the creepy girl.
That Quaid guy's in a lot of movies.
The Stu Macher character.
He's basically Pacey from Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, he's Pacey
he looks exactly
somehow.
like Pacey and acts exactly like Pacey from Dawson's Creek. Anyway, that
also
movie.
Charlie from the Mighty Ducks.
That movie sucked.
Bob said that talking with his mother about sex
Whoa.
would be as weird as giving his brother a hand job while he had sex with someone.
That is
same level of weird.
That is not what I said at all. We're watching the White Lotus, obviously.
Yes.
And in the episode that aired 2 Sundays ago, the dirty North Carolina brothers, the rich white folks from North Carolina, those
the
two brothers,
Ratcliffes, yeah,
they took drugs and got drunk and ended up in a threesome with the brunette. And as I'm sure anyone who watched the show knows, there was an exchange of physical intimacy from one brother to the next in truly disgusting fashion. It must be. Like, it's just,
I mean, there was a harmless peck initially, then it was a little more harmful, and then just handy, like what?
yeah, out and out, helping your brother out while you're balls deep in the brunette model type is weird, right? It's just
very, very weird.
It's weird enough that your older bro might be yerking it in the bed next to you while you're getting it in. But then to reach over and give him an assist, that's taking it to the next level, and it's gross and weird. Anyway, that was obviously what it was, right?
Yes.
Also in that episode, Belinda, who's the lady from the Hawaii White
From the
Lotus,
previous season, yeah.
who's on a like fucking
Sort of a
work
work
exchange program here at the Thai White Lotus to see how they do their spa services. Ends up hooking up with her counterpart there, right? And he spends
liaison.
He spends the night, and they have a good time, and it's
Very
all
unprofessional.
Sure, it's unprofessional, but also very
whatever.
very sweet, right?
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
that particular dynamic. Anyway, her son shows up. I don't know how you fucking screw this up, by the way. Like, your kid's coming the next morning. Don't be in bed with the guy. But whatever. Son shows up and gets let into the room while you're still in bed with with your fella there. And then, like, it's not enough to just be like, yep, well, that's awkward. That happened. Let's never speak of this again. Instead, they sit down at, like, fucking breakfast and start talking about how, I've got needs too or whatever. And
right.
the son is like, yeah, I'm proud of you, Mom, for getting out there and getting laid when you need to. Like, what? What?
Same weird.
And I said,
to Bob. Same.
To the modern ear, this is going to sound weird because, like, people think, like, oh, you should just have frank discussions about these sorts of things.
I don't think that's why what you're about to say is what I find weird.
But I said it is not the same. I made this explicit. I said it's not the same, but it is as anathema to me, right? I'm not putting them on this. I literally made the point as it was coming out of my mouth. These are not equivalent, right?
Yes.
But they are equally anathema to me, as in I could not imagine pursuing a conversation with my mother about her sex life in any way, right? I do not want to have that in the same way that I would not reach over and give one of my many brothers an assist
Right.
if we happen to find ourselves, which again, would not a situation that we would find ourselves in together. The point being not that they are of equal or equivalent levels of incestual weirdness,
Right.
Objectively speaking, but in terms of whether or not it's something I would participate in, equally the answer is no, right? Like, I don't want any part of that conversation with my mother, and I don't want any part of that interaction with another man, especially my brother, right? So, like, I don't see what the controversy here is, unless you choose to frame it in such a bad faith way as Lori did at the top.
I would not put those two things anywhere near each other. Like, one is so removed from any possibility. Just the handy is just so far removed. I mean, I don't have that dynamic with my mom to talk about whatever, right? But that's not like out of the realm possibility that somebody else would have a relationship with their parent in that way.
I'm not talking about somebody else. I'm talking about Abe. You sit down to a late breakfast with your mom and you ask her how it went last night in the bedroom with the rando.
Right. But this
is that in the cards?
No, but this is like they're not volunteering information. You just stumbled into this situation.
Yeah, and you can choose to never fucking talk about it again.
Yes, if you're a Catholic sort, yes. But like other people talk about these things, not me. Again, it is weird. I grant you that, but nowhere near. It's not even the same.
No, I agree. Nowhere near. I'm making that plain, but also, I think it speaks to the current moment in an obvious way, which is like very few people would recognize that conversation between mother and son about her getting plowed the night before as anathema, right? As weird, as out of place at all. Right. And to me, it's like, no, this is not the sort of conversation that you want to be having with your mother.
Yes.
And like I think it's good that society is wrong. It is the children who are wrong, not me. I have a firmer grasp of where the fucking line is, right? Then whereas Mike White is like, I don't know, where's the line? Is it here with the conversation between mother and son, or is it over here where younger brother is yerking off older brother? No, Mike. The line is way further in the other direction.
There are some of those sex positive people. They think all of this is kosher, you know.
Anyway, that was 2 weeks ago. Yes. The most recent episode had less explicit, disgusting sexual interaction between family members, but also suffered a great deal from the fact that there is one really compelling storyline happening and like 3 other completely not compelling storylines happening. But because of the nature of the show, they have to pretend that they're all enmeshed together and that they all carry equal weight. And it's like every time we moved away from Walton Goggins and Sam Rockwell and their interaction with the Thai multimillionaires to any of the other stories, it's like, well, I guess we got to fucking hang out and wait until we get back to the interesting story here.
There so many storylines have kind of stalled. I mean, the suicidal father, come on, either kill yourself or don't. Enough. I don't know how many episodes this has been. The mook and the stupid fucking security guy all right, what are we doing here? At least the girlfriends are kind of like confronting each other, so there's like some movement there. But
so what is the? Like, I get the sort of prurient and voyeuristic appeal of watching these 3 women be catty towards one another and to relitigate decades of ill feeling that they've sort of papered over in the past. Yeah. But like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm spying on a fucking Facebook wall that I have. Like, who fucking cares? Right. Like. And like, I hope that Lori doesn't get herself in, not my wife, but the character doesn't get herself in trouble out there while having a good time banging the Russian or whatever. But like,
that guy pumped her for money like immediately. Like, hey,
pumped her once or twice.
Wrong choice.
No, that was the exact right choice of words, actually. There.
Do you know how demoralizing it must be to finish what you believe to be a positive sexual encounter, and then lay down for the pillow talk, and he's like, so how about 10 grand so I can get my mom out of Russia?
That's a lot of money. Yes. He kept on Zelle. I got like, what do you need? Like Cash App? Like, he was very adamant. Even when the girlfriend showed up to like disrupt this whole thing, he's like calling her back. Like, come back for more assault because I need the money.
About this. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't fucking care
but,
about
you know,
those
even
characters
with,
either.
Okay, the one storyline that you found compelling, it just kind of like petered out even. I mean, with Goggins, what's the guy's name? Rick and Sam Rockwell's character. He is riding the ship in his life, right? His friend tells him about his, he wants to like bone, you know, like that whole monologue he gave, like the last episode, 2 episodes ago, and how he's no longer drinking. He has, found some sort of semblance of peace. And he's like, hey, I need your help for tomorrow.
It's not clear that he found peace. I think it's worth noting that what he found was something else to devote his various sort of unbridled passion and appetite into, right?
Right.
And even
just like the social media thing we were talking about.
Even if it is Buddhism, right? That you are then directing all of your unbridled passion and enthusiasm into, the sail is still being flown all the way up to the top of the mast, right? And therefore, it can be filled with whatever wind you're willing or maybe unwilling to fill it with, right? The sail is still up. The wind is still blowing, and if the winds shift, you haven't actually solved any of your problems. You've just filled your holes, forgive me, with something else.
Be that as it may, if you're going to ask for my help and then that help leads me to relapse, I'm going to take responsibility for it. I was having the tea and then I decided for whatever reason to have the whiskey. But this is...
To be fair, it's a really fucked up moment to find yourself in, right? And wouldn't you, I have many times, you sit down to watch the president talk, and it's like, I can't fucking do this. I'm getting a whiskey. And then I can watch the president talk, right? It's along those lines, wait a second. So my good old buddy here has a gun in his pocket and believes he's confronting the man who killed his father, and I'm pretending with very ill prepared. By the way.
What?
Did none of the homework necessary to really make this ruse work in terms of even being able to name a single movie that this woman had been in her past.
It's a good thing she's very susceptible to flattery, that she gets so distracted by the fact that they could not name anything. Right.
A brilliant improviser, though. And he's like, that one where you were a queen or monarch of some sort. And she's like, oh, yes, that one. Yes. Tell me more about myself. So, yes, though the interaction does ultimately peter out, I think we get all but confirmation that that's his father, right? Aside from the general look of him, which is that guy could be that guy's dad, I think.
Yeah, the casting is great. Did you find that frustrating at all? This person, by all appearances, looks like he's going to kill you, right? There's a good 4 Mississippis to where the guy could have just chimed in to save his skin. The guy stands up, points a gun at him, reveals his scheme. And the old man does not, he just kind of looks at him. Instead of, if he's indeed the father.
If the thing that he's processing is, holy shit, 60 years ago, I guess I got that girlfriend of mine pregnant and never heard from her again or whatever. I can see him, needing a moment
processing
to figure all of that out.
While he's about to die. Anyways, the reason why I mentioned, if you're going to put your friend Sam Rockwell in this position and he relapses, you got to do more than just flip a chair over. You got to beat the old man up. You got to make it worth it, because now this guy.
Because Sam Rockwell didn't want him to hurt.
I know, but he has now relapsed. Make it worthwhile. This guy has now ruined his life, and he is.
But it was worthwhile.
You think it's ruined?
It has.
Do you think how stable was that sobriety if it could be knocked over by feeling slightly uncomfortable in this situation?
I'm sure that's how Goggins is going to justify it, but he is sitting there. Rockwell is fucking doing lines of blow. He's got a bunch of
all the drugs.
Yeah, a lot of prostitute, and he is he has found his zen at the great cost of his friend's sobriety. Basically that was the trade-off.
He's found his zen. What he's done is he's ran away quickly from a scene in which he did a violence, not a horrible violence, but a small violence to an old man who has many millions of dollars, presumably, and also has in his employ bodyguards who are not afraid to do violence on his behalf. Meanwhile, he's registered under his name at this guy's hotel.
That's right.
And his girlfriend is still there.
Yeah.
Right? And presumably he's going to go back to fetch her or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's left her in a very vulnerable position here. unless the old guy is like somehow sympathetic to this whole thing and isn't going to raise hell about it, or died. Like, who knows?
I mean, there's like a shootout in the next episode, right? Or is the next episode the last one?
Yeah, the next one's the last one.
So maybe that's them.
Is the shootout the bodyguards?
I mean, I don't know. I did not see any previews or anything. I just like
the shootout is 100% going to be your boy Guy Talk, who's afraid of doing violences to people.
And he's going to do violence to like prove his worth to what's her face?
He figured out that it was the Russians.
He was doing the math. Yeah, he's like, oh man, it was them.
Yeah, it's the.
Because Bob was right.
Of course I was. It wasn't a fucking great.
I know you're right. I know.
They weren't hiding it from you. Valentin was obviously a dirtbag from the beginning. Anyway, I don't know. That's my money is on Guy Talk being the person who's doing the bulk of the shooting here, or at least participating in it.
What happened to the suicidal Dookie?
I don't know, but
to go face the music. He doesn't have a gun.
I would be disappointed.
He's now gotten both his oldest son and his wife to tell him, I have nothing else to live for. So he's gotten their explicit permission to do them in if, in fact, the world has fallen apart around them, which, of course, it has.
It would be such a cop-out. I don't know how this is plausible at this point because of all the information we received already, but it would be such a cop-out if he, turns on the phone and somehow the lawyer sorted it all out and they're not in the same grave danger as he last left it. Like if there was some sort of like it would be consistent with the rest of the seasons of this show. Right? Like if there was some sort of like, oh, that guy was lying, the guy that threw you under the bus was whatever. So like he was like about to kill his whole family and he didn't need to because of whatever. Like if it kind of gets tied up like that would be disappointing.
So I think what we're aiming at here with that family is they came here and 4 of them wanted to go home as quickly as possible and 1 of them wanted to stay, and they're going to end with 4 of them kind of having to stay and maybe wanting to stay, and 1 of them wanting to go home, which will be the daughter who wanted to stay ultimately.
What do you think is going to motivate her? Is it because like, oh, my kid brother wants to do what I want to do, or she's like, I don't want to live in this squalor? Or
no, she wants to get away from her family. If her brother's there, that's not that.
It's not even like, I don't know. That was a weird moment to me, and it like I know why. Like it felt like an authentic moment where she goes in and she finds her brother and she's like, "Hey, so what do you think?" And he's like, "Oh no, I'm really into it now. I want to stay." And it felt like an authentic moment where she's like, now all of a sudden this is less appealing to her.
That was supposed to be her thing.
If he's around, and I wonder if it's just no. I'm taking this seriously. Like and could my feeling here actually just be this surface level and dumb? That like after 3 seconds, my 18-year-old brother is like, no, yeah, I'll do this too for a year. And she's like, no, this really fucking matters. You can't just decide to do it on a whim. I've been thinking about this for 2 years now. And I wonder if that's what's going on in her head in that moment. More so than just, I don't want to be around my family.
What, I guess she's so involved in her own decision making. She did not like really process what her brother was saying when he was like something about dark thoughts. She didn't. No follow up question. Like what are you talking about? Like what happened? Like right. he was like almost like confiding in her, and she's just like, fuck off, guy. Go back to sleep.
Also, it's not like the first, because he's made sexy eyes at her too earlier in the season. Like
this kid seems to be lost. Maybe he doesn't need this Buddhism. I do like how the mother is like praying through Jesus to defeat the fat man Buddha.
Praying to God that her daughter has a terrible time in the Buddhist temple.
Seems to be working too. She doesn't seem like she's taken to the whole thing.
Anyway, I guess we should. You want to make predictions about how this all shakes? I said Guy Talk. It could be. So right now we have. It could be the old man's bodyguards coming back to find Walton Goggins. It could be like the cops are like the Thai cops are descending upon the Dookie, maybe in some sort of extradition type thing. Although that is certainly what he's going to think is happening, right? Like,
but now he's out of a gun, so he's not in a position to do anything about it.
Right. Although on the look ahead that they show you at the end, they bring back up the poison fruits that they talked about in episode 1. That there's the trees all around them are full of poison fruits.
So he's still trying to annihilate his family.
So we might be looking at a trying to kill the family via poison fruit situation.
Like a Jonestown thing.
And then there's the Russians. Conceivably, could be being attacked either by
the Russians are dead.
Local fuzz or Guy Talk.
Although I mean, Valentin works there, right? So if Guy Talk confronts him there, and then he sends his goons to come help, and there's crossfire, maybe something along those lines.
Yeah. Who do we think is dead? Who is the body that we saw floating in the water?
It's got to be Guy Talk, right? I mean,
my guess is who Belinda was banging.
The porn chai. What's the guy's
porn
name?
chai? Yes, tremendous name, porn chai. My guess is that the dead body is porn chai, or among the dead bodies is porn chai. Because what we need to have here, it's not enough. It's not enough that Guy Talk dies. Guy Talk needs to be corrupted and feel bad about things in some way. Porn chai is he is a pure and innocent character who's done nothing wrong except have a crush on Belinda and offer to have to start. People are always offering to start spas with this chick.
I know, yeah.
Well,
I guess she has that vibe about her.
That's what people do when they are in this business, is they open a business.
Yeah. I think it's porn chai.
You don't think it's any of the principals, like Chelsea? Nobody like that is going to die? Like the girlfriend?
Chelsea.
The toothy girlfriend.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. We've never had an on-purpose death. Not really. Yeah. Like, they tried to kill...
Well, the gays were trying to kill her.
Yeah, but they didn't.
No.
And then the one before was an accident, too.
Well, what was the death in the first one? I don't even remember.
He stabbed him accidentally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this could be that. Guy Talk, maybe...
Guy Talk is going to shoot porn chai, and that's going to be the end of things.
By accident.
There's a lot of gunshots, though.
Does Belinda cut a deal with Greg for the money, or what happens?
So you know what's interesting? I mean, first of all, that the fact that he's offering the money is proof positive that he killed her, right? But also, there's no evidence that he killed her other than the bribe that he's trying to do.
No, but she can make his life way not as good.
Right, but
and by not taking the money, he will make her life if this is a guy who was willing to kill Jennifer Coolidge in order to secure his well-being, well, he's gonna not have a similar willingness to kill Belinda in order to ensure his ongoing well-being.
But it gets messy then. Yeah,
it's messy. You take the fucking money. What are you doing?
You take the money, but you don't take the 100,000. You can't. I mean, if that's the first offer.
Oh yeah, we're gonna need another comma here, Greg.
Yeah,
what are we talking about? I've seen your house. Are you fucking kidding me?
But you have to be careful. It can't be high enough to where at this point I might as well kill you. So you can't. So maybe $1 million and you settle it half. Something along those lines. But yeah, Belinda was like, oh, I can't catch a break. I'm like, here is one. It's happening. I mean,
this is literally the break. You are in a position where it makes sense from both.
It makes so much sense.
It makes sense from a practical and also sort of from a survivalist perspective, and also to some extent, what good can you do?
Right.
It is a shame that good things happen to bad people, perhaps as a result of their murderous intent. Sorry, it's a bad world, right? And the long arm of American justice is not going to reach this guy.
Right.
That's how this works.
Yeah. So there's the civil damages, even though you're
you are the Goldman family here,
exactly.
Extracting from Orenthal James Simpson.
Except Greg Gary is willing to pay out, and OJ kept on hiding his funds.
Do we think that the story that the brunette tells Arnold's son is Greg's sincere kink, or was this just a weird ploy to attempt to do violences?
Oh, I would not trust that guy. Like, I don't care what sort of... I'm not kink shaming. That's a weird fucking story. But, like, regardless, I'm not trusting that guy to be, like, just watching.
Was there any indication in previous seasons about the amount of incest that we were going to be in for if we continued watching this show?
Yeah, I don't know.
Everything is about fucking family sex this year. It's fucking weird.
I don't like it.
It is very weird. It's fine with a dragon show because it's not real, but this is
Yeah, it's totally different. It's fine there.
Yeah, because they have dragons there, so who cares? But here, this is like a hotel in a country that exists. Like, what are we doing?
All right, Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight, then. We will talk to you next time.
Later.
I don't trust the brunette at all, though. And I think that she is as equally not to be trusted as Greg Gary is, in all likelihood.
The Duke, North Carolina family dying would be too dark for this type of show, right? So that can't possibly happen.
Usually, yes.
Right?
It also feels like something that is sort of counter to the ethos of the show, which is the rich don't usually face consequences.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Abe is saying it would be cheap for a lawyer to be like, oh, hey, all better, but it would also be the way this show goes.
Right.
But the way that the show goes could also be he's got $1.5 million in a bank account somewhere that is beyond the reach of the federal government. And, like, I'm just going to disappear here and I'm never going to leave this fucking country and we'll live. It's going to be a fucking bummer for my kids, obviously, who don't want to do that. But this is what we got. Like, that could be their escape hatch. Unless he poisons them all with the bad fruit. Who knows? I'm glad the season is ending. is what it comes down to, so that we can get because it's not, the show is not going to hide its answers from us.
Right.
At least it hasn't in the past, so I wouldn't think that it will this time either. But yeah, not a great season of television, I don't think. But
doing pretty great with the ratings, but yeah, it's fine.
Is it? What is pretty great these days relative to
like
HBO?
5 million viewers is some sort of they're doing
5 million's a good number for HBO.
Yeah.
It's also, like, not as good as it is. I am attached to these characters, and I don't want bad things to happen to them, even though they're not real.
The only fully redeeming quality is Amy Lou Wood's face when she's reacting to things that are really fucking weird.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the face that she makes when the Schwarzenegger character is being told about getting a handy from his brother is priceless. And then again, the face that she's making when the brunette is talking about Greg's secret kink is quite spectacular as well.
Oh, and when she's talking to him and he says something like, I don't have issues, and she, trust me, you do.
Yeah.
Although, what was that moment where she invites him into her room to give him a meditation lesson and teach him about his spirituality, and then he reaches out and touches her? Is that her recognizing that he's just trying to get into her pants again and she doesn't want any part of it? Or is that a moment where she's like, oh, man, I kind of want to bang this dude, but that's why he's got to go, like, right now?
Yeah, that wasn't clear. Because she does have her suspicions of him, but he seems to be coming down to earth, you know?
Yeah, I guess a little bit.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.